Namaste, my name is Pranavanand Oja and I belong to Faculty of Law and Governance, and this session is in continuation with the last session, that is Schools of Law. And in today's session we are going to learn about Aristotle's concept of law and Aristotle's concept of justice. So what is Aristotle's concept of law? Aristotle was educated at Plato's Academy in Athens. His fundamental concerns was with the delineation of the path which had to be followed if man was to achieve the good. Man, although a part of nature, could control nature through the exercise of his will. It is this which separates him from all the other creatures. When man is perfected, he is indeed the best of all animals. But if removed from the ambit of law and justice, lie is the worst of all. That is why man is a political animal. It is Aristotle's conception that man is a political animal. Man's laws must be judged by the extent to which they assist him in developing his innate powers to the full. Now, Aristotle focuses on the embracing nature of law. So, what is embracing nature of law? Laws that are rightly constituted are to be community's guide in all matters pertaining to social life. The law must be concerned, therefore, with all the issues related to the community. The law must rule. Aristotle sees the difficulties inherent in personal rule by an autocrat. The rule of law involves rule by God and reason. Rule by one man becomes a perversion based on appetite and high spirit. Law must exemplify reason free from passion, and it must direct magistrates in the execution of their office and the punishment of offenders. Law may be employed also as an instrument of education, habituating the citizen to understanding the good and training him to contribute to the welfare of society through his good behavior. Now, rigidity in a law must be excused with. So, rigidity in law is to be eschewed. Aristotle built the foundation upon which contemporary concept of equity rests. In the Ethics, Aristotle explains that which is equitable is just, not legally just, simply a correction of legal justice. So because law is universal, but it is not possible to make universal statements about some things. When the law makes a universal statement and a case arises out of it, which is not embraced in that statement, it becomes right when the lawmaker falls into the error by oversimplifying. To correct the omission, this is the nature of the equitable. To correct the law where, because of its universality, it is defective. In the Rhetoric, Aristotle notes that it is equity to pardon human failing. It is equity to pardon human failing, to look to the lawgiver and not to the law, to the spirit and not to the action, to prefer the arbitrator to the judge. For the arbitrator observes what is equitable, whereas the judge sees only the law. In the Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle argues, when the law lays down a general rule and thereafter a case arises falling outside the general model, it is then right. Where the lawyer's words have turned out to be too simple to meet the case without doing wrong, to rectify the deficiency by deciding as the lawgiver would himself decide if he were present on the occasion and would have enacted if he were aware of the case in question. With this, we come to the Aristotle's concept of justice. Justice for Aristotle exists among those persons whose relationships are truly regulated by law. To administer the law is to distinguish the just from unjust. Justice may be classified as follows according to Aristotle: distributive justice and corrective justice. Now, distributive justice, sometimes also called materialistic form of justice. So, what is distributive justice? Distributive justice is essentially which is exercised in the distribution of honor, wealth, and the other divisible assets of the community. And these may be allotted among its members in equal or unequal shares. Equal must be treated equally, unequals unequally. Justice in the distributive sense would aim at proportion in contrast to the disproportion which characterizes injustice. So, proportion characterizes distributive form of justice because it is material justice, and disproportion would characterize injustice because this is material justice. With this, we come to corrective form of justice. So, what is corrective justice? Pardon me. So, what is corrective justice? Corrective justice, it is concerned with the restoration of a disturbed equilibrium. A judge will treat parties as equal, will investigate the situation by imposing penalties which will take away any ill-gotten gains and will take into account the suffering caused by the offense. Now, Aristotle notes that corrective justice may be administered in the following situations. So, there might be two types of transaction where corrective justice might stand. The first is voluntary transaction. So, what is voluntary transaction? Voluntary transaction is selling, buying, hiring, lending, pledging, etc. And what is involuntary transaction? So, basically, involuntary transactions are violent in nature. And there are certain examples of it such as theft, assault, maiming. With this, we come to the Aristotle's concept of a state. So, Aristotle sees state as government, and the aim of government is to fit the individual for the good life and to satisfy his social instincts. He discusses monarchy, aristocracy, polity, and their perverted form. So, basically, according to Aristotle, there are three basic forms of government and three perverted form of these three kinds of government. We will look all of them case by case. Now, the first is monarchy. What is monarchy? So, Aristotle explains monarchy as the desirability of a state governed by a monarch is rejected by Aristotle because it is generally obsolete and objectionable. Monarchy arose to meet the needs of a primitive type of society which is obsolete. It is objectionable according to Aristotle because it tends to become hereditary. It subjects equals to the rule of equals. An individual monarch may be misled by his passions. No one man can attend to all functions of government. The only exception to this may be found where a whole family or some individual is so outstanding in virtue as to surpass all others. Then it is just that they should be the royal family or that the individual should be the king. Now, second is aristocracy. By aristocracy, Aristotle has in mind the best citizens. That is, those whose natural endowments and standards of educational attainments equip them to rule. And this form of government was favored by Aristotle. Now comes polity. Now, polity is the type of state which rests upon a constitution allowing the rule of the masses under the law and a system of justice which is enshrined in that constitution. Now we come to the perverted form of these three type of governments. Now first is tyranny. Now tyranny is the degenerate form of monarchy and is characterized by the predominance of the ruler's selfish wishes over justice and law. Now, second is oligarchy. Oligarchy is a corrupted form of aristocracy and exemplified by rulers who reject the aim of the general good in the favor of their individual advancement. Now, democracy. Now, according to Aristotle, democracy is the worst form of government and is a degraded form of polity. A lack of moderation, an absence of justice, and dominance of selfishness. All of these characteristics are characteristics of this type of government. Now, with this, we have reached to the end of Plato and Aristotle. And these two are the founders of the Western tradition, so to speak. And with this, we will move towards Roman law and starting of Roman law, and how Cicero plays the utmost importance in the creation of Roman law and secularization of natural law. Till now, what we have saw that Aristotle and Plato tried to define law with the help of nature, with the help of reason, with the help of rationalism. And to all of them, law has a content of priori. And priori means something which has come with the evolution of the man. So when I say a priori, means something which is already existed with the birth of the man, birth of human being. And likewise, in other traditions comes posteriori. Now, a posteriori believes in the experience or empirical value, means that whatever form of knowledge that you have acquired it through your functions of brain, and that functions of brain is basically experiencing the facts, experiencing various objects, and through that experience you gain and you attain knowledge. And earlier in natural law, the earlier schools of natural law believe that there is some divine connection with the law, and it is Cicero who has divorced divinity from the natural law and believed in something called practical reason, and there is something called practical activities. Now, according to Cicero, the law is the highest reason implanted in man, see, a priori, implanted in man, and commanding that which we ought to do and prohibiting the opposite. It is the highest form of reason which may be discovered in nature, becomes when firmly rooted in human mind, and then it further developed into law. Now, according to Cicero, law is a standard by which justice and injustice may be measured. We will read more about him in next session. Till now, we have ended two founders of Western tradition, Plato and Aristotle. Thank you.